that rate now is down to the 3.67, and it steadily went up, it peaked, and it's steadily going down. So we keep things in perspective by comparing the number of tests to the number of cases we have. You realize that we are on the downturn and not increasing. The county's rate of tests per case, we're at 0.355. And that's the most recent numbers that we have, which are 4 cases that we have as of yesterday. There were 132 new cases yesterday. Unfortunately, Hidalgo was one of those counties that got hit pretty hard. They had 17 positive cases. That gives them a total of 20 cases thus far. Good news is, Doña County, they only had 1 case yesterday, and that's certainly a low for them. Statewide, there's 161 people that are hospitalized. 4,160 have recovered, and 52 people are intubated on ventilators. The data really suggests that we're normalizing with respect to the pandemic. Hospitalizations are at a low. We haven't had this number since May 1st, and in the number of people that are hospitalized, as well as intubations or ventilators. We haven't had anyone, we haven't been this low on the use of ventilators since May 8th, and we're at 51 back then. So we really are, we creeped up, we peaked, we're creeping down.
One item, Manager Swingle, I think that our public needs to know that Sierra Vista Hospital is functioning and that they can get into the clinic and have appointments, and they are utilizing telemedicine, but there are also people can get in that need an appointment to see a doctor.
That is correct, and they're doing the elective surgeries, things of that nature are also moving forward. They also have the ability to do rapid tests. You've got to meet certain criteria. They can test you for COVID, but they can do a rapid test if you meet the criteria. They don't establish the criteria. The state Department of Public Health created that criteria. So if you meet that criteria, they can do a rapid test. You'll have your response, the results in minutes. They're now also doing the antibody testing, and that's available to the community as well. What they do require is that you have a provider give the instructions, the orders for the hospital to provide that test. Again, that's not their rules. Those are rules that have been dictated to them by the Department of Health. Now, the state has gone 22 days thus far without doubling in cases. Our prior record was we've gone 24 days. And that last doubling of cases in statewide was on May 24th, which we had 6,943 cases. We won't double again till we get into the vicinity of 13,886 cases. That is many days to weeks away from now. We're at 22 days without doubling, so my point is that our doubling of cases is getting protracted out pretty significantly every time we double. And that is absolutely an indication that we've flattened the curve and that all of the precautions that everyone's taken are really having a positive impact on the state's cases. We had, over the weekend, that's Saturday, Sunday, and yesterday, Monday, 3 days, we had 14 deaths, 3 in Bernalillo, 7 in McKinley County, 1 in Roosevelt, and that was unfortunately their first fatality that they've experienced, and 3 in San Juan. Thus far, we've had a total of 440 deaths statewide due to COVID. Thus far, 91.6% of the state's deaths have occurred in 4 counties, and that's San Juan, McKinley, Bernalillo, and Sandoval. And consistent with the region, that northwest region, the next closest to them is Cibola County, and they've experienced 8 deaths as of yesterday. So putting things in perspective, I think we as a county and as a state, we're doing very well. Sure, we'd like to see no cases, but the state's given no indication that they're going to do anything but to continue to ramp up their testing. So we'll see cases for the foreseeable future. However, keep it in perspective with the cases versus the number of tests that are being done. Things are looking quite well in New Mexico and Sierra County. I'll stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Commissioner Lewin? Okay. I just want to highlight a couple of things, and perhaps we can add some information. The question of, do I fill out the census, is so critical, and that you talked about the nearly 40,000 over the 10-year period, but what people need to understand is that we get direct money from the census count, and if people are uncounted, that costs the county almost $4,000 per person who's uncounted per year, and that accumulates very quickly. We're a very small county with a limited budget, and those dollars that we get through direct funding and grants are so critical to us that we really encourage everybody to fill out the census and participate in that. So, you have any additional comments on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. It's a really good point. And the money doesn't come directly to Sierra County, although some of it possibly could. It comes to the community in the form of services and funding for services. It comes in the form of housing for low income or special needs. It comes in the form of education dollars for the schools, particularly special education, meals for the kids, programming at the schools. It comes in the form of grant funding availability for roads, whether it be in the county, whether it be in one of the municipalities. The better turnout we have, the more funding is available to us. We are missing millions of dollars. If you just take a 10% increase in our representation rate of participation in the census, it's over $12 million. Just a 10% increase in our response. $12 million could do an awful lot of good for Sierra County residents. If you take, a much more robust figure, 30%, I don't recall the number, but it's in the neighborhood, $40 million that would be coming back to Sierra County over the next 10 years. And if we don't have good representation, we're going to continue to be underfunded. And that's what we're doing now. We are underfunded. We know we're underfunded. We have a lot of special needs, a lot of social inequities that are occurring within our community, economic inequities. And the only way to fix that is having those grants and having that funding available to the communities. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Also, I really want to compliment County Manager Swingle and Chief Tooley and Flood Manager Atwell, who has worked tirelessly to keep our stores of personal protective equipment and outreach for participation in a statewide effort, that we are in good shape in Sierra County. And you have provided a lot of PPE to the medical facilities rather than them having to go get it on their own. They have gotten some, but we've augmented their supplies substantially. So such an excellent job, and I know it's been a lot more than an 8 to 5 effort in getting those materials and getting them ordered and getting them executed here and then distributed to the various folks that need them. The same with the food. We've actually used part of our litigation reserve to provide food for folks. And what's our total on providing food for Sierra County citizens so far? Do you have that available?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we provided 7,938 meals to residents thus far.
I just think that shows that this commission and our Sierra County management care for our citizens, and especially those who are disadvantaged or unable to go get their own groceries, that we're here to help them out. I know there are several churches and charitable organizations that are doing the same thing, but if folks need food, give us a call. We'll help you out. We've had a bit of smoke on the horizon, especially last week when we had one day that our air quality was pretty poor. I know that Chief Tooley has worked with the Gila National Forest and our own Ranger Hutchins here locally to get some air quality monitoring on this side. The fires are primarily in the Silver City area. And we do have a air quality monitoring at the District Ranger's station, and Chief Tooley is trying to get one to the south end of the county. We'll continue to see smoke. Folks need to know that we're also monitoring the situation. We have had some initial attack fires, but we haven't had anything get away and cause us problems on the east side of the Continental Divide. So appreciate your efforts there very much. Manager Swingle, did you want to address our budgeting workshop?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, I do. Last week, we had a budget workshop with the commissioners and myself and the finance director, treasurer, and we failed to post that notice of that budget workshop. No decisions were made at the meeting. The budget won't be ready for review and approval until July, at the July meeting. What's the date, July 17th?
21st.
21st, July 21st meeting, but we absolutely failed to advertise that meeting, and I apologize for that. It's my responsibility to ensure that it gets posted, and we will move forward from there.
Well, this COVID has messed us up in so many ways that was an oversight, is excusable. I think that our commitment to the citizens is that this commission and this management are transparent. We didn't make any decisions. We grappled with a lot of budget issues. We'll bring that up in the July commission meeting. But I just appreciate you being very forthright and saying that you missed that and taking responsibility for it. I don't think that's a bad thing, but we want to make sure that our citizens know what's happening with their county government.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. To that
Yes,
end.
sir. Oh,
So I would just ask to make sure that the public is then apprised, and I heard you say this in your statements, that when we're considering the final budget for consideration, that we recap the discussion that was had with respect to the budget, so that way the public can be fully apprised of the nature of the discussions that were had at that budget hearing.
and we will do that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Attorney Beto. Anything else, Manager Swingle?
No, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, thank you.
Sheriff Hamilton, do you have a report for the Sheriff's Department?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. But first, I'd like to start by saying I offer a sincere apology to you, Mr. Paxton, to you, Commissioner Day, and to you, Commissioner Luna. The portions of your official meeting have turned into a this or that, a citizen versus citizen, and a pro versus con, as it pertains to some of the differences we have professionally in our positions. I knew when I was elected to this office in 2015 that not all of my decisions I made would be popular with everyone. And it's why I set up an open door policy within my department. It's why I post and put my personal cell phone number on my card, my business card that I hand out to the public. I encourage the public to come in and talk with me on any issue that they have either a difference or are supporting me on. And I offer that same approach to our commission when we differ on opinions. So it's with great debate and forethought and prayer that I make the following decision to mitigate this. It's with deep regret and disappointment that I must inform the Board of Commission that I will no longer be providing you with monthly reports during your scheduled meeting. I feel, as demonstrated during last month's commission meeting, my participation in this process has inadvertently sent a false message to some here in Sierra County that I answer to or am subordinate to this governing body. I've always and will continue to have the utmost respect for this commission and for its elected members. It is my desire to continue working with all of you towards resolving the issues facing public safety within Sierra County and the well-being of all of our citizens. As I'm required by law to attend all sessions of the County Commission, my future activities during your meetings will be limited to matters involving public safety and items specifically required to be taken by this governing body as they relate to the Sheriff's Office. I would urge the board members and members of the community to please stop by my office anytime, and I will accommodate your schedule to provide you with any information you require concerning the activities of your sheriff and his deputies. I thank you for your understanding, and I respectfully request that you support me in this decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sheriff. Comments? You have any report to
Oh, no.
add?
Sheriff, I just wanted, I certainly think it was, the dialogue could have been better last commission meeting. But I mean, you have the choice to not give reports, and that's your choice. And as a commissioner, I respect your decision. At no point do I think it got to, in the conversation that it got to where the commission was acting superior to your elected position. I don't think it got there. But again, that's your own elected official. You make your decisions, and as a commissioner, I respect that. I respect your decision. I would like moving forward that we continue as a commission and the sheriff have an open dialogue. Again, whether we agree or disagree. But we have to move forward as elected officials and work together for what's best for our entire county. And I hope we can continue that.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Day, I agree 100%. And again, I'm open to accommodating any schedule in which to discuss those specific needs. I just don't think that doing so in a public format is productive to the situation and productive to the work that this board has to do and that we have to do as public officials. Again, I would much rather any differences that we may have as to decisions I make or decisions you make, I believe are probably better discussed across the desk from each other as opposed to airing them in public format. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Day.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Lewin.
I'm gonna go off the cuff, so roll with me. You know I supported you, Sheriff, in your election, your first one, your re-election, and I support you today. I don't support every action you do, and I don't expect you to support every action I do sitting here. I do expect us to have mutual respect for one another, and you have questioned things this commission has done, and we have answered those, and likewise it goes both ways. We are fellow elected officials. There are other elected officials within this county that have never made a report to this body, and it bothers me greatly. Not because it's reporting to us, but because this is the opportunity, this is the avenue, this is the venue for our constituents all to get the same information at the same time. So I respect your opinion and your decision to not present the information, but I feel sad for the constituents who we have gone above and beyond to make sure they know what's going on countywide by having Mr. Tooley here, having these meetings broadcast on the radio, on the internet, on 5 different channels on the internet. So at no point do I think you answer to this commission, but I think we have similar responsibilities as elected officials, and that is to let the people know that we are doing what's right by them, that we are spending the money properly. So I don't agree with your decision, but I do respect it. And I do hope you will reconsider it, because the people who are listening to this meeting who can't come to this meeting because of the restrictions are now not going to get that information. Your open door policy is great, but last meeting there was over 100 people listening to what was going on at the exact same time. Everybody got to get that information at once. That is a very burdensome task you are willing to take on if you're going to sit down with 100 different people at their schedule instead of dispersing the information at one open meeting at one time. So, and I hope if you choose to not give the information in a report method to this commission, you do the same to Elephant Butte, who also authorizes use of their funds, and you have an agreement with them, because that's what's fair and balanced. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewin. Sheriff Hamilton, I will just say that, you know, these are very interesting times. I think that history will judge us on our actions. There is such divisiveness in this nation that it grieves me. People are to the point of supporting their viewpoints with violence. And I think that that's a shame for the United States to be in that situation. I think the things that you have done, I said in the last commission meeting, I'm not the man behind that badge making those decisions based on the things that you do. I think it's very important that you operate as the sheriff of Sierra County. I find it trite when it's said that we're all in this together. I think that together we're all in this to make a difference. I think Sierra County leads in a lot of things that are happening in the state of New Mexico and in the United States in the way that we treat each other. We don't see color, creed, political viewpoint, all the other things that distinguish us by class or by some thought of virtue. We see each other as neighbors. And I hope that we will continue and go forward and get through the things that cause us such pain in this pandemic and the administration. I think that we need to be able to have an open and above board discussion before decisions are made. I also hope that you would reconsider your decision. I go back to the when Commissioner Day and I traveled to Albuquerque, and we learned so much about county government in that grueling week-long meeting. We learned that the county is supposed to maintain roads and hold elections and provide for peace for the citizens, and that the sheriff is the key in providing for that peace. So you, as an elected official, are a member of this core group that takes care of Sierra County. So may cooler times and cooler heads prevail. And I would hope that you will continue to come before us, especially when there are things that the county commission and those who listen or attend our meetings are needing to hear. So if you have no reports, we'll conclude our reports. Commissioners?
Let's do business.
We don't have any Board of Finance, and we don't have any new business, so old business, so we'll go to new business. The RISE grant, Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. What you have before you is the application narrative for the grant. It's for the application itself is for $395,640. RISE funding would be used for to continue treatment and other support services for our inmates and former inmates, those upon release. Emergency housing, in-custody treatment and reentry services, professional development for our detention staff. That's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of this funding to grow our staff and our capabilities in-house, as well as building a more robust behavioral health service system within Sierra County. It will allow case managers to spend more time and have more resources available to find out what services are needed for each individual. These grants, these programs are all very individualized, that they look at each individual and assess them what they need, and then find those resources and provide them to them. Interesting enough, this is going to take the place of the IDP program. They just renamed it. Our recidivism rate in Sierra County is 92% for incarceration. They will be reincarcerated 92% of the time. That is with no programming. With limited programming and basically doing a behavioral health assessment of the individual, that number drops down to 34% recidivism rate. They're in the IDP program, they have the evaluation, they have some therapy, treatment, and participate in the programming, and are involved in IDP housing. That recidivism rate has dropped to 12%. It's an incredible decrease in reoccurring crimes in this community. So it's staff's recommendation that you support the application and the grant for RISE.
Questions?
I have no questions.
I just have a comment, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. Bruce, make sure that Virginia knows that the commission really appreciates her efforts in seeking out and applying for these grants. Looking at them, they're very in-depth, and they take a lot of work and effort, not only getting them, but working through them. And I just think that needs to be commended from the commission. Virginia's taking
Agreed.
leaps and bounds in handling mental health issues. And so please share our gratitude to Virginia on those efforts.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I will do that. She's done a tremendous job. She's got a passion for behavioral health, substance abuse. And you don't always see that in a detention administrator. You know, it's more of, lock them up. I think it's very characteristic of many of the detention administrators in New Mexico that they realize incarceration is not the answer for a very big percentage of our population. Unfortunately, we have no other resources in rural New Mexico. Jail is where most people go. We're giving them options now, and it's paying off, and it will pay off in dividends. Thank you.
Along that line, Manager Swingle, we sought out that intervention demonstration project. Was there a limited availability of those funds? Did we have to compete for that demonstration project?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that's a very good question. They only gave it to 5 counties. Unfortunately, they picked the 5 counties that had the greatest problem. We were number 1. And you will also talk about the next item on the agenda is the Behavioral Health Investment Zone and that grant. We are number 1 on the list. The Department of Health considers us to be very high risk, our population, for behavioral health, substance abuse, suicide, and suicide attempts. So unfortunately, this is not a good list to be on, but they're responding with dollars. They're responding with dollars that we're using it twofold. One, to provide the treatment and services that are needed, but to build and grow a behavioral health system in Sierra County, something we very much lack since the beginning of time.
So because of our success in the IDP, that has transitioned into this response-inducing sustainability evaluation with additional funds that we're going to consider today. And then the BIZ, the Behavior Health Investment Zones. So we're moving forward. That recidivism is mind-blowing, that we can have that kind of reduction with some treatment and some counseling and some helping folks find a job and maybe find some dignity and some reason to go forward. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Commissioner Luna makes a motion to approve the RISE grant narrative and budget.
Commissioner Day seconds.
moved and seconded. A roll call. Clerk
Commissioner
Shelley?
Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion is approved. The Behavioral Health Investment Zone Narrative and Budget, Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is also a result of the success that we're experiencing. I know that the Health and Human Services and Department of Health are really considering Sierra County's success to be one of the most successful, if not the most successful county of the original 5 counties that we're moving forward with IDP and RISE. We're not where we need to be, as far as creating our behavioral health system, but we're really moving in the right direction. This grant is for about $250,000 for the first year, and $500,000 per year for the next 4 years. The money is not for just incarcerated inmates and for individuals incarcerated or post-release. This is for the entire community that is in need of behavioral health services. It's to grow the behavioral health system within Sierra County. It's to provide community outreach and education, enhanced treatment and referral services, which have been really non-existent for most residents in Sierra County. Intensive case management of individuals, behavioral health individual and group treatments and therapy sessions, and other services needed and identified. And this is really nice to see in the grant. That we've been very limited to the language of the grant on the scope of work. This grant says, and other items that are needed that are identified. So as we continue to move forward, very often the clients, the behavioral health clients, have some input to make the system better. Well, with the original grants, we were stuck to work within the scope of work that we had. This gives us some latitude, gives our behavioral health folks latitude to really expand the services. So with that in mind, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's staff's recommendation to approve the recommended budget.
Comments?
One question, on this, Bruce, if I understand right, this is for any individual with mental health issues, am I correct in that? How would an individual who's not incarcerated that wants to be involved in this program, who would be the contact?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Day, that all has to be, that system of communication, marketing plan has to be developed, but either the county, hopefully any entity, the healthcare facilities, all of your doctor's offices should all be able to refer, as well as Olive Tree and Apple Tree and anyone else in the system. But we have to create that system, and that is part of the outreach and education.
And thank you for that, Mr. Chair and Bruce. I think once it is created, I think it's crucial. It needs to be put out there to the community if these services are available, because I think we have seen in the past where, you know, any entity, not just a county, has these great services, but no one knows about them. And so I think it's crucial once that process and those names are officiated, that as a county we have a campaign to get that out there to promote the program. But Mr. Chair, I move to, Commissioner Day moves to approve the biz grant narrative and budget.
Second, point of discussion.
Point of discussion?
Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Day's point, I also hope that, you know, maybe we can get business cards with that referral information, because I believe we hear daily of the law enforcement officers who are dealing with these behavioral health patients that refuse to get assistance and don't know where to turn. But maybe this thinking outside the box would be the answer for them. So, you know, I think right on target there, Commissioner Day, to create all those methods.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Jocelyn, you had a comment you wanted to
The
bring
head
forward?
of this is gonna be the Olive Tree though, they're the ones that are gonna
Correct.
facilitate and
Yeah.
refer and everything that's gonna be required.
Well, if I may make a comment before we vote in discussion. I've talked to some people who are dealing with some severe stress and depression from the economic hardships that we've experienced with this pandemic and our associated stay-at-home and businesses closed and opportunities lost and payments not met and those sorts of things. So I think it's key that people who are feeling stress, depression, and some desperation have a place to go, to get some help, to get some counseling, to get some answers. So I'm glad that we have Olive Tree developing their programs here, and that we have this behavioral health grant to move forward and to help some folks. we don't know when this pandemic ends or what comes next, but to have a facility that we can deal with those in need beyond those who are in a legal framework and having to do that as part of getting out of the system and getting released is really key for the community. So with that, I have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? Roll call, Clerk Shelley?
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion is approved. The grant is accepted. Item C, reappointment of Kathy Pape to the governing board of Sierra Vista Hospital. Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kathy was appointed by the commission when we had a vacancy. The commission appointed her. She has a tremendous background in healthcare. She's a very valued member of the governing board. Staff would ask that you consider reappointment of Kathy Pape for the position. She's done this fantastic job.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Luna would like to make the motion to reappoint Kathy Pape to the governing board.
Commissioner Day seconds.
Motion and second. Roll call. Clerk Shelley?
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Reappointment of planning board members Patrick Gray and Larry Holmes. Manager Swingle.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Patrick and Larry both have been on the committee for some time, on the Planning Commission, I should say, and very valued members of the committee. Certainly attend meetings, participate, and go the extra mile when we need freeholders, things of that nature. They always volunteer. It's staff's recommendation to approve both Patrick and Larry.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
there's no discussion. Commissioner Day moves to reappoint Patrick Garai and Larry Holmes to the planning board.
Second. Commissioner Luna, second, sorry.
Commissioner Luna seconded. Moved and seconded. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item E, work and financial plan between Sierra County, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services for fiscal year 20 and 21. Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. What you have before you is the agreement that we enter into annually for the APHIS officer, specifically focusing on predatory control. The county share of this agreement is $40,250. Much of that is covered under the Taylor grazing funding. The total budget that the feds kick in 49% is $79,553.95. We've had a great relationship with the APHIS officer. They were scheduled to talk to the commission to present today. However, when we had the broadband study come up, we didn't want to convolute the phone system, didn't want to take a chance of it. They were very receptive to delaying it, although I did tell them that the commission was very supportive of the services and would be deciding on their contract today.
Well, Ray Pierce has sure been a benefit to us. I know that he's up in the Beaverhead area dealing with wolf issues, so he probably wouldn't have been here today to present to us. But is there a motion on the APHIS Wildlife Services participation?
Commissioner Luna moves to approve.
Commissioner Day seconds.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, Shelley?
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll go to contracts and agreements. Professional services agreement between Olive Tree and Sierra County Detention. I hate acronyms. For the behavior health investment zones. Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. What you have before you is a contract that Dave and Jocelyn worked out for Olive Tree. They will oversee the grant and the implementation of the grant. I'll defer any other comments to the Chief Procurement Officer.
Jocelyn, go ahead.
Hello, Commissioners,
Morning.
Commissioner Chair. I just wanted to update, it's basically the IDP grant, but they renamed it. They're gonna basically follow the same exemption code so that we can keep it as the program continues to develop. So we're just updating the agreement for, because it's only annually, and they might change the maybe next year, hopefully not. But that's what the state gives to Virginia. So moving forward, it's the EIZ grant, which was the IDP grant. So it's just additional funding to keep the program moving in the next fiscal year.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Day moves to approve the professional services agreement between Olive Tree and Sierra County for the BIZ grant agreement.
Commissioner Luna seconds.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Jocelyn. Professional service agreement between Smithco and the County of Sierra for a design and build A1A agreement for the Ammons building. Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Well, this has been a long process. I think like 2 days before we were supposed to actually review the proposals for the design build, I think COVID hit at that point and delayed everything out months. But we've been able to circle the wagons, come up with a strategy, conduct the interviews, the telephonic interviews of the companies, and we've done all our scoring. And Smithco is the contractor that the committee has selected. Any one of the companies that were in the finalist list were very capable of building the building. There were some very, very different proposals submitted by each one of them, and I think Jocelyn may want to explain some of that to the commission.
So this was the hardest RFP to do just because of COVID and trying to get everything done. But I appreciate the committee that evaluated and the participants, because everybody did a great job during this process. The reason behind choosing Smithco was, of course, that they're local and that would help keep local employment. But on top of the decision made, of the 3 offers selected, they had offered a roof with the cost, the entire roof repair, and that was important to the committee because of possible leaks and stuff like with this roofs that we currently have and the issues that happened at Date Street. Moving forward, we don't want to move into a new building with new materials and then a roof leak with a patchwork or an overlay. So that was one of the most deciding factors that we chose Smithco. And then the way they were gonna walk with us through the entire design phase and finish was another. All the other ones offered the same, but Smithco had a little more advanced way of doing it during the presentation phase. So that was another reason why the committee selected Smithco as well. And they've done great work with the county on other projects. So, and all these offers were, I couldn't say anything bad about any of them. So it was a difficult decision, but it was fair.
Well, our kudos to the committee for the evaluation. It looks like it was a pretty in-depth evaluation. And appreciate their work in these unusual remote conditions. So that's appreciated. Any comments, commissioners?
I do.
I have some
You
as well.
first.
Commissioner Luna.
No, Commissioner Day, I always go first. Commissioner Day.
So, for me, there's no question Smithco is very qualified to do this.
Yep.
I think we're gonna have a fun discussion on how do we pay for it. And for those that are the public, we have 900,000 of available funds to do this, and so we have to find another 2 million out of general fund dollars. So with that, I know we've had some discussions at our budget hearings on money that could do this, and I did some math, so bear with me. I particularly looked at our 901 investment funds. We have about $2.3 million sitting in that account, and then in discussion with our treasurer, we have about 1.15 million coming in from PIL. I am not a huge fan of tapping into our reserves, but after doing some of the numbers, I feel a little more comfortable. So if you look at, we're looking at 2.9 million to do it, minus the 900,000 that we have, leaves us 2 million. If we take it out of our investment funds and then put our PIL into the PIL that we're receiving into our investment funds, it leaves us about $1.4 million where we, in our investment funds where we currently have 2.3. I have a hard time going under 2 million, or 200 million, 2 million in that investment fund. So my question would be, where does the other $578,000 come from if we move forward with this? How are we gonna replenish our investment fund by $500,000 to where I can feel comfortable? Because in my opinion, I feel fine spending the money if we have a plan on how we're gonna put money back into our investment fund.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Commissioner Luna.
you echoed my comments. I think we all know that it never is going to get cheaper to build anything. And so if we don't do it today, it's not gonna be cheaper in 2 years. And we can't look into the future. I don't think in January any of us would have predicted the last 3 months of our lives being like they are. So I think we can come up with a plan, but all good plans are meant to be broken, right? I mean, they're just,
Sure.
that's what happens. So
Modified.
there we go, modified, I like that better. I have thought about this since our budget workshop the other day. How do we do this without taking every bit of savings the county has? And that's something that, since Bruce has got here, has been his baby in making sure we have that rainy day fund. And so, you know, personally, I have that exact same question, Commissioner Day, and I would like Bruce to tell us that it's okay to take the rainy day fund he worked so hard to create, and if he sees a plan or if he sees a method where we can, you know, work for that money. We talked about the sale of this property being a possibility when that comes. I hope that there's not a day where we say, man, we wish we wouldn't have sold this, but at the same time, maybe that's the answer, and that is one of the things that have come to mind. So if you don't mind, if we can hear from the
If I
manager.
can just answer that just real quick, and I thought about the same thing, obviously we can recoup some funds by selling this building. And I'm certainly not opposed, we have to get the Ames building done, and I agree that it needs to be now, because later on it will get more expensive. Again, for me, I want to be able to feel comfortable to where 5 years down the road, whether I'm on the commission or not, the commission at that time says, holy cow, we have no money in our savings, or not enough to get us by through the year. That's the last thing I want. I cannot sleep tonight if we pass this without a plan on how we're gonna replenish the funds.
Even if it's modified later?
Well, and again, I think you brought up a good point where we never knew this COVID was gonna hit back whenever we bought this building. And then, so I don't think that's any fault on the commission or anybody. This is just an extraordinary situation we're in. But we have the opportunity right now to make a decision, a wise decision in over the next 5 years, what the county looks like financially. And I think that's one thing that I'm certainly very, I had a word for it, but I think it'd be inappropriate in the setting, but something that I strive for is fiscal responsibility. And then so I'm actually very interested in hearing, Bruce, how we're gonna replenish this fund. So at least the $2 million to make me feel comfortable.
Before we go to Bruce, I want to interject just a thought. You know, we each have personal responsibility, and we have a bank account, and we cannot overdraw that bank account without suffering the penalties. And we have a moral responsibility to not spend more than the money and funds that we have in hand. That's a responsibility that most of us were taught when we were children, and is the responsibility of a good citizen. We don't want the country or the state going bankrupt, much less the county.
Can I add on prior to getting to Bruce?
Hold just a second. I look at some of the facilities that we're in, and the old school was built in the 30s in the Great Depression, and it acts like it's that old. The roof leaks when we repair it. There's critters, small and large, including squirrels that get through the walls. It's a creaky old building. We need a facility that will serve the citizens. I also have been an advocate of one-stop shopping. Let's get all our resources under one roof, with the exception of the sheriff's office and the road department, who operate independently. But if you need to go see the assessor and get your tax values, and you need to go to the treasurer and get that paid, and you need to go to administration and do some things, and if there's an appointment with a probate judge, you get him out of a closet and put him into an office. So our desire has been to serve Sierra County. Our need is to do that with fiscal integrity. And this is the cost we have today. If we wait a year, I don't know what the cost will be, but I agree it will be a lot more than it is today. So, Jocelyn, let me hold you and recognize Manager Swingle and see if he has a plan, and then you may want to contribute to that discussion. So, Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Ironically, a couple of years ago, we had no reserves. We had nothing in the bank. We had to freeze the budgets several times during the year to let our cash flow catch up with our expenses. Commission approved a resolution allowing us to start putting money away into reserves. And we've done that. That, I see no reason why that wouldn't continue under normal circumstances. With COVID-19 and the economic impact that's going to have, we have no idea. When we're going through our budgeting, we're planning on about a 20%, because that's what the experts are telling us, plan on 20% reduction in revenue. We don't have 1 month's data to tell us that that's actually true or not true. We should be getting the results any day from the state, determining what our revenues were for the month of April. We don't have that yet. So we don't have a complete month yet to really see how our revenues are going to decline. We're planning for 20. Departments have all been informed of a 20% reduction in revenue and plan accordingly. We've cut the budgets to the nth degree, but we've cut them every year. We've made sure that there's no fluff in those budgets, that they're absolutely essential services that needed to be provided, or equipment. I have no comfort in telling you that you'll have the revenue next year or in the next 2 years under the present climate of the pandemic and the economic stresses that we're going to go beyond. I've sent you material on the two beliefs out there, the U recovery, which is fairly rapid, and then the L-shaped recovery, which is really prolonged and goes into 4 and 5 and 6 years of recovery before we start recovering at a reasonable rate, at least to pre-pandemic levels. But what I do know is the Date Street building has to be vacated. Those offices have to be removed from that building, particularly the dispatch center, but all of the offices. The building is antiquated, and we've exceeded the electrical capacity of the building. We brought in numerous electricians to look at it. None of them want to touch it, because if they touch it, then they're responsible for anything that happens from that point on. And I can't blame them for that. This is a 100-year-old building or close to it, And we've done nothing but grow it from a school to a very technological building with SCRTA, the assessor's office, and the technologies that they bring, as well as the assessor, treasurer, and the probate judge. So I can't give you a lot of comfort. What I can tell you is if you spend the money on the building, we will still have reserves available for the county. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.4, 1.5 million. Not count our carryover that we have year to year as well, plus the revenue coming in, on a monthly basis. Whether it be GRTs, motor vehicle fees, magistrate court fees, etc. It is a difficult decision. I don't think when the commission considered purchasing the building, which we got a very good deal on the building. It is the only building in Sierra County really that would accommodate us. The new plans, or the plans that the county sanctioned 7-8 years ago, we're looking at $7 to $8 million for the building to accommodate us all. You're looking at $3.5 million for everything. This building, the purchase of the building, 5 acres of land, as well as the new construction. Basically, the building would be gutted, other than the walls, and then replaced with new equipment, new technology, and then the proper infrastructure in place for that technology, the conduit, things like that, the pathways for all of it, something we don't have in the other building. It's just wires running, and then a couple years later, new wires come in and replace the old wires. A few years later, more wiring goes on top of the old wiring. I think it's essential that we get it out of that building, and we get all of the offices out of the building. The plan has been to move everybody into one building. That should, I think, continue to be the plan. And then we really reassess the finances and reserving money, putting money back into reserves when we find out how bad we're going to be impacted. If we're impacted at 40, 50, 60% of our revenue, then we probably shouldn't go forward with this project, because we won't even make it through next year without having to take really serious measures into place. But that's not what the experts are saying. They're talking about a 20% loss. We've factored that in. We've cut our budgets. We can make that 20% loss in revenue with the changes that we're making to the FY21 budget. I know I didn't answer your question directly.
No, you really did.
Very political answer.
You really did, and some of that is based on the faith that we're going to recover, and that we'll recover in a good measure. Jocelyn, what did you wish to?
So, just to clarify, we had intended to try to minimize the cost, and we did a 2-phase where it would be to move the Date Street and try to separate without moving the entire administration. And all the studies that came back from the comments that were made from the people that offered to us clearly stated that if we did not do it as a full phase project, it would be a mess and it would end up costing more in the long run. So
Yeah.
that's why we were opting to just try to get the funding moving forward to move everybody at the same time on completion. Because if we start a half building where we have the elected officials in, and then we try to back end and put the administration in, power goes out, phones go out, business stops anyway. So moving forward with the complete project is the ideal way to move. And we did work really hard to come in as low as we did, because the Taj Mahal would have been one of the other offers, but realistically we couldn't go there. So we went where it was best for the community, the staff, and the taxpayers as a whole is what we looked at. And that's what I looked at when we did this project.
Thank you for that, Jocelyn. Discussion,
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
our attorney Pato.
can I ask how long the offer is firm for?
90 to 160 days.
90 to 160. So what I'd heard from Bruce is that we don't yet have the information with respect to April, and it might be prudent if we don't know if it's going to be 50 or 60% or 20%, to wait on a firm offer until we can get a better sense. But again, that's totally within the board's discretion. Whether or not you'd like to wait and see what those numbers come in at, whether or not it is a 20% hit or whether it's 60% hit, and that way you can make a more informed decision.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I think that's a great idea, although I don't believe 1 month is going to be the trend for us, but at least it's some information. That also gives us a chance to see what impact the special session is going to have on local governments. We know it's going to have some. Let's find out what that is, and giving us that extension does allow for us to realize that impact.
Mr. Chairman, I might also add that I don't believe we've yet received our tilt funding and for this year. Is that correct, Bruce?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Dave, yes, that's correct. It comes in at the end of this month, toward the end of the month.
So again, that would give us an opportunity to actually get that money in hand and make sure that funding hasn't been suspended or somehow affected by the COVID. And we're not counting on chickens that haven't yet hatched.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Pato, Manager Swingle, and Jocelyn. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, Dave, thank you for that. That's certainly one option that I thought about pretty heavily is maybe we don't make the decision today. This building's not going to be built in the next month. And if the offer, from what I hear, is good for 90 to 160 days, I think it's fiscally wise for this commission to see what the numbers come in at, see what happens during the special session, and make the decision in July. I would feel much more comfortable doing that, because then we can see what revenue losses are actually coming in at and what decisions are made in Santa Fe.
Is that a motion to table?
Mr. Chair, I move to table the agreement with Smithco until our July meeting.
Is there a second? With some reserve, but there is a second. Clerk Shelley, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Paxton,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
The motion is tabled until the July meeting, so we will consider that next month. Resolutions, ordinances, and proclamation. Resolution number 20-002, an ordinance providing for automatic direct deposit of salary or wages into employee's account. Manager Swingle.
Thank you.
May I pause? Officer Rodriguez?
Sir, I apologize. I was hoping to address the commission at some point today and also your constituents here to clarify some things with something the sheriff had brought up earlier pertaining to concerns that are throughout the community. After I missed that opportunity earlier, not terribly familiar with the way all the county commission meetings run. But I also need to get out to the lake to check on my officers out there and see if they need anything in support of them.
Commissioners, would you agree to allowing Officer Rodriguez to address us? Please approach the podium, officer. And,
He's a lieutenant.
Lieutenant?
He's not an officer.
That's right, I have to be an officer first, so it's,
Yeah, but you work
it's-
hard to get where you are, so you all deserve your.
no, that's all right, I have to be an officer first.
well, thank you, Lieutenant, and I apologize.
It's okay,
Just
sir.
dress well.
I'm
I'm a 1911 guy, so I appreciate
Oh, I love
that.
my 1911, sir.
Yeah.
It doesn't do you any good if you fall in the water, but,
Yeah.
it's dragging you to the bottom, but outside of that. I want to address some things, and the sheriff brought it up earlier, that there's a lot of back and forth within the community. It's something that we see and are not always in a position in which we're in the same room to be able to address many of the concerns that the community has. First and foremost of those is that we are here, quite frankly, to protect their safety, the people who live here, their safety, their constitutional rights, to uphold the law, to make sure that when they leave in the evening, they come back to a house that was the way they left it, it hasn't been burglarized. I think people over the past several months have misconstrued things that have happened to think that maybe the sheriff is at odds with us or we are at odds with the sheriff. We are in very close contact with each other. I'll tell you, I've worked with many sheriff's departments around the state. in which we don't share the kind of relationship we share with the sheriff's department here. They can call on us at any time for anything, and we will help to the best of our ability. We can call on them at any time for anything, and we will help to the best of our ability. Something that I would like to explain is our response to the COVID and the public health orders, because I've seen tons and tons of speculation, misinformation as to how we're responding to that. First off, to get into that, when the health orders first came out, our decision as state police, this is something that we worked on from coming off of chief staff, is that we were going to work on this essentially from a position of education and trying to get people to understand why the public health orders was in place and why we were working to work on that social distancing and limiting the businesses and things of that nature. The public health order and the public health law stipulates that essentially someone would be issued a cease and desist order followed by a citation and referral to the public health department, in which they would pick up civil proceedings from that. We made it very clear to everybody that we encountered that was in violation of the public health order that our first goal was to work with the people here in this community, and that included the churches. Fortunately, the sheriff facilitated a meeting with all the pastors here in this area, something that I've not seen spoken about, but we spoke about that to help them be in compliance with the public health order and still continue with services and things of that nature. Throughout the course of this, our goal has not been to issue citations and shut people down. We've specifically told businesses, look, we're not going to shut you down, but we do have a job that we have to do, which is issue the cease and desist order. After that, issue a citation. We've worked again very hard for education in Sierra, Catherine, and Socorro counties. We have issued 3 cease and desist orders since public health orders began. We have been able to work very, very well with people in getting everyone to work together. It is not our goal to come and tell people this is what you're going to do. I think the sheriff would support me in that. We have issued 1 citation in Socorro County after we spoke with that gentleman at length about, like, this is why we can't do exactly what you're doing. Here's some other ways to go forth with that. I understand there's been much concern about the constitutionality of the public health orders. Rest assured, there is much Supreme Court case law and federal law that goes back to 1902 ruling that has been cited over 600 times in the Supreme Court that supports the governor's ability to do what the governor is doing. Again, our goal is, like you said, we're all working towards a common goal. We're working towards a common goal. Our goal is to get to the back end of this whole thing, this confusion, this thing that everyone is trying to learn on as we go and on the fly, as the community that we started out in. I would encourage people to take that into consideration when they talk with each other, that the bickering and the back and forth and violence and things like that we see stops. We're here to work together, no question about it. The local police chief, we are here to work together, no question about it. We will support the sheriff's department absolutely in their mission to provide for the safety of the people here, and I have no doubt, as they most recently did with the pursuit that we had on I-25 two weeks ago, that they will support us absolutely in our mission to provide safety to the people here. So again, that's something that I wanted to put out there again for the county commission and also for your constituents that are watching. I want them to understand that we are here to support and defend their rights. Unfortunately, we don't always understand what our rights are, particularly in volatile situations or confusing situations such as this one. But we are here to support and defend those rights. If anyone has questions for me, I am available. I work out of the Socorro office primarily. I try to get down here to Sierra County as I can. Sometimes it's more often than others, and I apologize for that. But I'm available to any of you. If you have any questions for me, if you have concerns, if you have something you need addressed, I'm happy to do so. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, thank you for coming, and we appreciate your patience. We'll get you on the agenda much earlier if you or Captain Allgaier come before us in the future.
I appreciate that, and I apologize. Again, I go to a lot of meetings. I'm trying to figure out the flow of some of these things, and I have some learning to do, so I appreciate you bearing with me.
Thank you for coming before us.
Sure. See you. Take care, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, sir. Nice to see you, sir. You guys take care. Thank you.
Okay, we'll return to ordinance 20-002, Manager Swingle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, you had a public hearing this morning, accepted public comment on the proposed ordinance. The ordinance is to require automatic direct deposit of county employees and have the money directed to their personal bank accounts. This was precipitated by COVID-19 and the pandemic, and all of the resources that we have to put together to execute payroll, check signing, we bring in a commissioner to sign checks as well as staff that's involved. It was for no other purpose than just to streamline the process. There is an exception in the ordinance that allows for employees, elected officials, to request an exemption with the commission. Commission would decide that at the next available commission meeting, whether they would make an exception for that individual or not, based on a good cause. There's not a lot of verbiage to the ordinance. It's about as de minimis of a ordinance as you'll ever find. For Dave Pato to write a 3-page ordinance is,
Unheard of.
yeah, it's unusual. So I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners?
One question. Before COVID-19, Bruce, how many employees were getting the hard checks and not having direct deposits?
Most.
Most?
I would defer to Serena, the HR director, for
There's approximately, Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Manager Single, there's approximately about 14 to date. There is two checks being issued. I was in that count, just noted, and I now get direct deposit, noted.
Commissioner Linden?
Chairman, I think your comments were on spot earlier during the public hearing. It's the way of the world, whether we like it or not. And people have long not trusted banks. And that's why they now have the little bank card, like the automatic card you deposit your check to, and then you can pull that money out. And so that's the way it is. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. It's a common practice in today's society. We haven't allowed people to attend these meetings in public. We expect them to have technology to be able to attend these meetings, and so I don't think it's out of the realm of acceptance to expect our employees to have a bank account or a Visa prepaid card that we link their check to. It's with the push of a button. It's for everyone's safety. Now you don't have to go to the bank. You don't have to have that interaction. And I hate to think like a lawyer, Dave, no offense. But, you know, we live in a world where people have sued because they got hot coffee, yet on the menu, it used to say hot coffee before you ordered iced coffee, right? And now I would think if we made people get a paper check and they went to the bank and they got COVID, would they sue us because we made them get a paper check and that was the practice? You know, it goes both ways. And so I think for us to, we heard comments during our public hearing about the threat of identity theft. Anyone can steal your identity in today's world. Not having a bank account doesn't make you exempt from that. I have been a victim of identity theft multiple times. My card's used. That's why the banks are insured. That's why the credit cards reverse those charges. That's why there's a process for that. Yes, it is a pain in the neck, but I am 100% behind for the matter of safety and easeability, employee practices, our time, everything that we go forth with this ordinance resolution.
Commissioner Day?
Ordinance.
I agree, and actually I appreciate the section 5.1 under that does allow for exemptions for those who do not want this. I appreciate Davey putting that in there. I'll be honest, I don't, the safety part of the Commissioner Luna, and take no offenses, I don't buy. I don't, but again, I think, your point of this is where we're at in today's society is very accurate, and, for those that don't want to do it, they have the opportunity to become exempt. I'll be honest, if that wasn't in there, I'd have a really hard time with it, but with that exemption, I'm okay passing it and letting those individuals who don't want it be able to come to the commission and say, here's why I don't want it, and we take a vote on it at that point.
Right.
So, Mr. Chair, if there's no further discussion, I move to approve ordinance number 20-002.
Second.
Votes in,
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I amend, I'd like to rescind my motion, and move to amend the ordinance to change the start date to August 1st.
So seconded.
okay, with the rescinding of that and a new motion, motion and a second, roll call please.
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion passes. Item B, Resolution 108080, continuation of local emergency disaster declaration. Manager Swingle.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. The original declaration that was made has expired, and we continue to provide emergency management services, and we are expensing revenue due to the pandemic. We are going to seek reimbursement for all of our expenses, and for us to be eligible for those reimbursements, we need to have the declaration extended. And extending it till August 15th is what's listed on the resolution. Seems to be sufficient unless something changes between now and August. If it does, we'll approach the commission. If things improve over the next few weeks, we'll also approach the commission about rescinding the resolution. But it's to make sure that we're eligible to receive reimbursement for all of our expenses.
Discussion, commissioners?
Just one question. Have we heard anything as far as reimbursement for the funds that we've expended so far?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, no, and it's not unusual. You don't in the middle of the crisis, in the middle of the pandemic. It's after the fact with all the accounting. We have been submitting reports every 2 weeks on our expenses. There's two mechanisms that we're reporting to. One is emergency management and the finance branch of state emergency management. The other is through the New Mexico Association of Counties, NM counties, and we're also trying to recoup some additional costs or additional expenses that some of our community entities have experienced. The co-op has had a tremendous expense increase in cost due to the pandemic, and we submitted that for reimbursement as well. This is going directly to the governor's office, where everything is submitted through emergency management, goes to the state, to the feds, through FEMA for reimbursement. So it'll be a timely process.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. It was just more of a curiosity question on my part. I move to approve resolution 108-080.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call, Shelley?
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Luna makes a motion, we go into executive session pursuant to section 1015E through H to discuss pending and threatened litigation, personnel, and real estate as listed on the agenda.
Mr. Day seconds.
Moved and seconded, roll call?
Commissioner Paxson,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Luna,
Yes.
We are in executive session. We'll come back into session from executive session. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to come out of executive session and certify that no action was taken and only matters as listed on the agenda were discussed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Paxson?
Yes.
Commissioner Day?
Yes.
Commissioner Luna?
Yes.
Seeing no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Our next meeting is July the 21st at 10 a.m.